Do you already have your investments with Fidelity? I'm David Cross with US Asset Management. Did you know that you can assign your investment management to my team and put my 35 years of experience to work for you? You simply assign us as your investment manager and you keep the same username and password. Professional management, and you get to work with someone who shares your values. Call US Asset Management today and put us to work for you.
Very close. How soon could the deal happen before the midterm elections?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think we're going to know a lot before the midterm elections. Look, I think that the deal could happen in the next week, but the deal could also happen.
Just got off the phone with President Trump, and he gave Fox News some brand new details on what happened with that Apache helicopter that went down earlier this week, and provided his thinking on where things stand with the negotiation. I want to start with a story the president told me, new details about the downing of this U.S. Army Apache helicopter. President Trump tells Fox News that the Iranian drone lodged in between the two pilots in this helicopter. They were flying very low. And at that point, the drone didn't explode as it had intended to. And so these pilots were trying to take down the helicopter with the drone lodged into this gunship without it exploding. And at any moment, it could have exploded, the president told me. And he said it was on fire. There was a lot of heat inside the cockpit of this helicopter. And ultimately, these two pilots were able to take it down into the sea, where ultimately they were rescued for the first time in U.S. military history by an unmanned sea drone. Now, President Trump also talked about the U.S. strikes last night against Iranian radar systems and air defense sites. He said the Iranians had tried to rebuild during the ceasefire their defensive capabilities, but they were unable to stop these U.S. strikes overnight, and they were hammered by U.S. fighter jets. Now, interestingly, President Trump told me that he is getting close to ordering new strikes against Iranian power plants and bridges, because he says the Iranians are tapping the United States along when it comes to the negotiating process. He says the bully of the Middle East is dead, and he told me I may keep going when I asked him about a possible response to the Iranian missile fire that targeted U.S. forces in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan overnight. The president said they had a chance to sign a deal and survive, indicating again that he may order new strikes against the Iranian regime in response to their dragging their feet at the negotiating table. Again, though, the latest information that we got from President Trump about that helicopter that went down earlier this week, really a remarkable story. The president called it a miracle. This drone hits the Apache helicopter, lodges between the two pilots. It's on fire, and there's a massive amount of heat coming out of the drone, but it doesn't explode. And these pilots very quickly, within seconds, because they're flying very low, take the helicopter down into the sea. And then ultimately, about 2 hours later, according to U.S. Central Command, they are rescued for the first time in U.S. military history by an unmanned sea drone. Again, the president ordering those strikes overnight to target Iranian radar systems and those air defense sites that the Iranians have tried to rebuild during the ceasefire. They weren't supposed to do that, but the president said just a few percentages of that defensive capability they were able to rebuild. And President Trump says they took out about 55% of what they were even able to rebuild. But just a remarkable story about these U.S. pilots from the Army that were able to survive this ordeal against an Iranian drone lodged into their helicopter. And again, President Trump ordering those powerful strikes overnight to send a message to the Iranian regime that he is not done. And if they are unwilling to make a deal, the president tells Fox News he may keep going.
echo. We won. So I want to start with a bunch of thank yous. I want to thank the big guy, God. Trump comes later. Mr. President, you're not far behind God, but we're going to start with him.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Wow, big day, big night. You know, my friend Rob Manus, Colonel Rob Manus, has a show, and he does More War Fridays. Well, today is, I'm going to call it More War Wednesday. The war is kicking off again, as you see in the Middle East. Fox News literally orgasming over the helicopter strike. I find that disturbingly odd. But anyway, that's what Fox does. Warmongers are going to monger. Zelensky is getting pats all the way around. The Russians making fun of Zelensky and his pats from Starmer, Merge, and Macron. Backslap after backslap there. Interesting, considering the reported or alleged sexual orientation of all of them. We find that interesting. I want to say hello to the crew in the chat. You're cleared hot. Thank you for all the engagement and all the comments all over our social media. Just love that. It's really, really helpful. And please keep it up. Check out whatfinger.com. Great aggregator site. They post a lot of our content. So we got some news this morning. Let me find it. Well, I'll bring that up in a second. Let me see. Just a second. Okay. Hold on. Well, we've been banned by TikTok. Funny. We've been doing a lot of videos, shorts, and TikTok came out and said, you know what? You're banned. We posted one image on TikTok, and here it is. Your account is banned. One image. So TikTok is not free speech, my friends. It's interesting. You saw Turkey. Turkey is, well, you didn't see Turkey. I thought that was in the cold open. We're going to talk about that. Well, in fact, let's go through the mission brief real quick. Today is June 10th. I'm your host, Todd Wood. Here's your mission brief. Has Spencer Pratt given up with election fraud in California? We may find out here in the second hour. War pops off in the Middle East. Where are we headed? I want to dig into that a lot today. Turkey warns Israel, and that's a big story, which I want to describe later in the show. World Health Organization ramps up vaccine agenda. Surprise, surprise. And Lindsey Graham wins. Surprise, surprise. We got a hell of a show for you today. I've got Christian Gabe, who's going to come on from our Euro Bytes team. Looking forward to that because Europe is exploding. I want to talk about Turkey and Israel. And then second hour, I've got Pete Blaber and Chris Gleason, the dynamic duo, to talk about what's going on with the election fraud. So don't go anywhere, my friends. We got a hell of a show today. Be right back.
Every day, your data is being tracked, collected, and sold, often without you even realizing it. Big tech companies control your devices, your apps, and the information you share. From your messages to your browsing habits, everything is being monitored and stored. Over time, we've traded privacy for convenience, and most people don't even question it. But what if you could take that control back? That's where Mark 37 comes in. Mark 37 provides privacy-focused phones, laptops, and tablets designed to give you full control over your digital life. With secure systems, expert support, and simple tools, they make it easier to step away from constant tracking and data collection. Because privacy isn't just a feature, it's a fundamental choice. It's about protecting your data, your freedom, and your future. Take back control of your digital life with Mark 37.
And by the way, I wanted to say I'm starting my journey with Sean. I'm going to be getting a Ghost phone and then upgrading to a Ghost computer soon, because I am going to unplug for the Matrix. And you can follow me along on my journey. So mark37.com/CDM is where you want to go to do that. Find the webinar, sign up for the webinar, and learn everything you need to know to get started. And then you can also sign up for a free 30-minute consultation on privacy there at mark37.com/CDM. But I'm looking forward to it, and I have been worried about privacy for some time. So I'm going to be taking the plunge and changing my life and unplugging from the Matrix, and I'm really looking forward to it. So maybe you can join me.
A warm welcome here at the National Press Club. Welcome to the journalists, welcome to the Embraer team, and welcome to the other guests that we have here. I'm going to announce, and as some of you guessed it right when they came in, the first E2 order by an American operator. And that operator is Avello. We believe this is really a strategic shift to unlock profitability for the customer. I'm very pleased that we have Andrew Levy here as the CEO of Avello, and I'm very pleased to give the stage to share a little bit more about what Avello is going to do with the E2 195. Thank you very much.
Couldn't be more excited to be here as part of this historic announcement. We have such a great cultural fit as companies, so we're very, very excited to be Embraer's newest customer. We launched our airline in April of 21, and our target is focusing on small secondary airports of large metro areas. We've carried over 8 million customers since we started on 63,000 flights. And we've done all these things with 1,200 of the greatest crew members I could ever imagine having, and many of them are here with me today. This is the right airplane for us. It's going to open up opportunities for us that no other aircraft can serve. The best thing about the airplane, of course, is you will not find a middle seat on this airplane. It doesn't exist. We won't have any to offer. It's going to be the best cabin in the United States, and we're so excited about that. This is going to elevate our experience to the highest level, and we think our customers are absolutely going to love the airplane.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Got Christian going to come on now shortly from our Euro Bytes team. I see him in the green room there. All right, here we go. My friend, what is happening? Ireland is exploding, yes?
Hi, Todd. Yes. So yeah, first of all, what's happening in Ireland, then the context, then the background. So obviously a person or a vulnerable man was brutally murdered in broad daylight yesterday, and as a transpired, a migrant of Sudanese origin was savagely attacking him with a knife. I mean, the image is disturbing.
So he did die, is what you're saying. He did eventually die.
So apparently not, but I'm not abreast of the latest news on that. Apparently he was in hospital, and what I read like an hour ago, he's definitely going to lose the use of one of his eyes.
Well, he was stabbed in both eyes, I read.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, so far confirmed, definitely loss of one eye. And the perpetrator, a man of Sudanese origin who traveled via the Irish border, I'm going to come back to that, into the country in 2023 and try to decapitate him. And apparently passers-by were shouting in that video, he's trying to cut his head off, he's trying to cut his head off. Now, this being Northern Ireland, somebody stepped in with a hurley stick. Hurling is a very popular sport in Ireland and Scotland. In Scotland it's called shinty, but essentially what American viewers need to understand, it is a stick, not unlike a hockey stick. And with that person managed to beat...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just playing this video while you talk.
Yeah, that man, that brave man, a family man, stepped in and managed to stop the perpetrator of what he surely would have done in terms of severing the person's head. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. It also transpired the man, the victim, apparently is, nothing is known of him yet. What is known is that he was a vulnerable person, which could mean anything. It could be a person afflicted by substance abuse. It could be a person afflicted with learning difficulties. So this was apparently a wanton violence and hitting a vulnerable person. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, this comes just a week after the gruesome footage at the end of the Henry Nowak trial was released, where we remember where essentially a dying man was arrested by the British police. Now, this happening within a week, where it was made abundantly clear to people the two-tier justice that people are facing in the United Kingdom, the native British population. And actually, the sort of vice prime minister, the second person in command, David Lammy, a man of Caribbean origin, even said, well, racial equality doesn't mean we're going to treat everybody equal. And I mean, the sentencing guidelines are very much, we need to bear equity in mind. So arrests need to almost follow the proportion of the population, not the proportion by which they commit certain crimes. So again, within a week, making it abundantly clear how both the police and the judiciary system are treating its own citizens, the native Brits, like second-class citizens. A brutal murder by the hands of a migrant follows. And now, last night, Belfast was set ablaze. And I mean, for once, GB News, I always often criticize them as the UK's version of Fox News did yeoman's work actually filming it. And a couple of interesting things transpire. So first of all, well, Northern Ireland is not the rest of Europe. I mean, what you and I had always been asking ourselves, well, what does it take for native Brits to get so angry that they're going to do something, that they're going to riot? It doesn't mean that we endorse violence. It's just like us asking, like, what does it take for natives to stand up? Again, not condoning violence. Mm-hmm. Now, Northern Ireland is a different beast than the rest of Europe. I mean, there were what the Brits euphemistically called the Troubles in Northern Ireland, the long Northern Irish civil war, essentially between the slight majority Protestant unionist population that wants to remain with Great Britain and the soon not to be a minority anymore Catholic population that wants to join the Republic of Ireland. And obviously, this is a place that has seen violence for 3 decades. We're organizing, well, first of all, organizing a riot is muscle memory within living history. Mm-hmm. And if you actually saw the pictures coming out from GB News, I mean, and yesterday I monitor various Telegram groups, and apparently a lot of Northern Irish Telegram groups, but even in Glasgow, in the UK, and in Scotland and elsewhere, people were saying, start putting on black clothes background. It's a tactical measure. If you can't be picked out by wearing a green or red or whatever jacket, the police finds it a lot harder to target individual people. So, and essentially what these Telegram groups say, unite, put on black clothes, be ready to be arrested. And I should actually mention, this be arrested comment doesn't come out of nowhere. Already when the UK state wants to actually exercise justice quickly, it can come down like a ton of bricks. It didn't do so during the George Floyd riots, but it did so in the wake of the riots following the Henry Nowak trial, where, I mean, they were brutally beating up a man that was limited in his mobility, a veteran who couldn't walk, so he was leaning against the wall and you could see the police beating him up with the riot shields. And the first sentences have been passed on the post-Henry Nowak riots with people going to prison for 2 to 3 years within hours. Whereas, I mean, many of the guys implicated in the grooming gang trials, and we're talking thousands of men, are still walking about freely. And
it's obvious what's happening. Yeah,
it is very, very obvious what's happening now. So now we've seen very organized violence by people who understand doing it. The GB News crew was trying to film in an area that was mainly inhabited by migrants, and a lot of those are so-called houses of multiple occupancy, which essentially means what once used to be a single family house now houses various migrants. But even the normal terraced housing, row house neighborhoods that you associate with Great Britain and Northern Ireland, these red brick houses, even those neighborhoods were set ablaze and targeted. And essentially the GB News crew was told in no uncertain terms by masked men to go away, that they weren't welcome there. And apparently what transpired is a lot of migrants that lived in that area were told to leave the house, and then the houses and the cars in front of those were set ablaze. And what the GB News crew also reported is that the emergency services were so stretched, both fire department and the police, that they didn't even bother attending to small unrest or smaller fires. And I guess, to probably quick historical background again. So this is a population that is much more well-versed, if you will, in organizing organized violence. And also the kind of population we're talking about. A lot of Americans are what they call of Scottish-Irish background. Now, Scottish-Irish is actually an interesting bit. So how did the Northern Irish troubles start? Essentially, it started by Great Britain transplanting Scottish settlers from the lawless borderlands between England and Scotland, the most violent population. They transplanted them into Northern Ireland as Protestant settlers, which were, because those were all, again, people that well versed in violence, people who knew they were with their backs to the wall. And interesting enough, those settlers, those Scottish-Irish settlers or Ulster Scots, were then later transplanted into the Appalachians because, again, they're pretty comfortable with defending themselves. Now you have this population with Catholics who had been fighting for their rights I'm just relaying how they view it, not taking sides, for their right to join the Republic of Ireland and remaining Catholics. And you have a Protestant population that says we're not going anywhere, we're always fighting with our backs to the wall. And you've got that population that isn't going anywhere. And the interesting thing is the most hardcore Republican Catholic activists and the most hardcore Protestant activists have actually joined forces. I mean, I had a Protestant minister giving a passionate speech saying, look, we need to put our differences aside. We have bled for this land. We need to defend it now. And I think an American commentator this morning had the insightful tweet. It's like the Hatfields and the McCoys from the legendary American feud suddenly joining forces. And that's exactly what has happened. So something extraordinary. And again, Northern Ireland is not like the rest of Europe. They will find it a lot harder to impose their will on the population. Whereas in the rest of...
Let me ask you, Ireland is a place where, and that's Northern Ireland, which is different, but Ireland seems to have been the one most targeted by this globalist agenda. Do you think it's because those are more hardy people or what?
Well, so the Republic of Ireland essentially, in a lot of ways, when it broke off from the United Kingdom in the 1920s, and obviously had the big uprising in 1916, which the British establishment has never forgiven them for, saying we have a world war to fight, i.e. World War I, and you guys are trying to break away. They have never been forgiven that, and have since remained neutral, and remained a country of modest means, but modest means, obviously weakened by the potato famine, like way back before they were.
Which was probably intentional, yes.
Which, if not intentional, Britain in those days didn't lift a finger to help it, certainly.
Right. So they were exporting potatoes, right? I mean,
yes.
You could see it as an attack on Christian populations.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, so essentially they're here to a country of modest means that was gradually on its way up. but it was the most religious Western European country. And at the same time, always, so the elements that made it break apart from the United Kingdom, the Republican movement, was always slightly socialist leaning. And I mean, see, there is one thing about every successful terrorist movement in Europe. They never organized spontaneously. Neither the Basque terror organization, the ETA, nor the German terror organization, the Red Army faction, nor the IRA ever managed to do without foreign help, i.e. the Soviet Union in a lot of cases. And they were always pretty, so even though they fought tooth and nail, much of these organizations were socialist. And then I think come the 1970s, 1960s, and suddenly the IMF came in saying, hey, do you not want to open up your economy? You could, have a lot of, if you have low tax, you have companies settled there. And from that moment on that they struck this devil's bargain. This is very gradually until it suddenly exploded. Ireland was very much targeted for migration. I mean, even with the insane levels of migration that the United Kingdom faces, Ireland is even higher. And the background of that Sudanese migrant, I mentioned it at the beginning as a footnote, was he flew, I think, via London to Dublin. And from there, as part of the EU deal, so once the UK and Brexit left the EU, there was a lot of arguments about the Irish border. It needed to remain open as part of the Good Friday peace agreement that put an end to the Irish Civil War. So the border is pretty open. So with that, Ireland has become a open backdoor into the United Kingdom. And that's where he went to the Republic of Ireland, landed in Dublin, took a bus, landed in Belfast, apparently was known to the police as pretty violent already, and this is how it always happens. And so I guess, and now the fallout of the whole thing is quite interesting. So on the one hand, I mean, everybody knew that Northern Ireland was a different beast than the Republic of Ireland or the UK or the rest of Europe. It was going to react much more violently. And the fallout is sadly and predictably the same as with the Henry Novak riots. Now everybody talks about the riots. Now everybody talks about the destruction of private property. Even the masked men who rioted also prevented the fire services from attending to fire. So everybody now talks about this rather than about the poor person, about whom we have heard very little, who he is, why he is a vulnerable person. And now Keir Starmer can do his usual shtick, kind of saying, oh, well, the full force of what he always does, the full force of the law will be brought down. And it always was. It was brought down on the rioters in Southport when the 3 young girls were brutally slaughtered with knives. It was brought down on the rioters in the Henry Novak case, and it will be brought down on the rioters. And so
it seems maybe, and I'm not pushing for violence either, but maybe this one is a little different because at this point you're just literally, do you live or do you die? So you can't really live under this system, right? I mean, where they're cutting your head off and killing your girls. So what do you do?
Well, I mean, this is very much the question. You have demonized young men in every possible way. Every group has a right to organize themselves and has minority programs. Every group can embrace their culture. Every group has privileges, such as the Sikhs wearing massively long knives, ceremonial knives, which for whatever reason are not blunted, but actually fully functional. Knives can do sword fighting, sort of like ceremonial sword fighting in police uniforms on the street, as showing, their contribution to the community. So yeah, what are especially young men to do? They're loathed by the system. People talk about toxic masculinity when they finally, organize behind people like Andrew Tate. We can have a full conversation that we don't need to have in this podcast. Other people do the whole debate about what's good, what's bad about Andrew Tate. But I want to mention one thing. And so, yes, rightfully violence and riots are criticized. It burns a lot of property. It always hits innocent people and all. At the same time, I mean, where does it come from? I mean, there was a young Scottish man, I think by the name of Chris Donalds, last name escapes me, who a couple of years ago, I had never even heard of the case, but the brilliant podcaster Lotus, he just brought up his name. And a couple of years ago, as an act of wanton violence, he was kidnapped by a bunch of Pakistani men and tortured horrendously to death. He was castrated, his eyes were gouged out, his tongue was cut out. And if you and I, we just talked a week ago about what was made known in the grooming gang, industrial-sized rape scandal, what was done to these girls, not just the horrendous rape, but, you know, there was talk about one of the girls having her tongue nailed to the ground, so it was easier to rape her, and all kind of these wanton acts of violence were, you know, I mean, this is not just meant to kill, it's just meant to maim and viscerally injure people. Like, I mean, the stabbing of the eye of that poor man. I mean, I don't even see a way how he would keep the functioning of his second eye. I mean, we hope and pray that somehow in his divine mercy there will be some sort of intervention from above and sort of help him see on that eye. But it's always this visceral act of violence. It's not, you know, even in the case
it's destruction of Christian society is the basic theme.
It is. And I mean, it's not just murderous hatred, just wanting to kill, but even with the girls in the Southport murder, I mean, he tried to behead one of them. The killing wasn't enough. He wanted to behead. And in a lot of other cases, he just deliberately went for the face. I mean, with some level of premeditation that you wouldn't think such savages are capable of, but sort of knowing fully well, I can't kill all of them, but I can bloody well inflict life-changing injuries and maiming. And that's what people are dealing with. And again, I'm not making the case for violence because, again, it shifts the conversation. There would be far better ways to make the life of the system more difficult, like peaceful demonstration and maybe even blockades outside parliaments, outside migration centers. And then people would talk about what these peaceful protests, these peaceful blockades would be about. And now everybody talks about the violence and how law and order must be restored. But still, I think you were hinting, does this time feel different? And I would say yes. And what I found interesting is that the riots not only happen in Northern Ireland, but at a much, much smaller, much more disorganized scale, even in places like Glasgow, where a couple of hundred people took to one of the main pedestrianized zone and had running battles with migrants there. So clearly something is happening, and a certain fatigue with what's happening. And obviously the government is hated more by the minute. It will be interesting, and I keep pointing out at the relatively boring election, the greater scheme of things, in next week, Makersfield, where there's a by-election, where one guy from our unpopular Prime Minister, wildly unpopular Prime Minister Keir Starmer's party, a guy by the name of Andy Burnham, the former mayor of Manchester, who, by the way, did a lot to brush grooming gang scandals under the carpet, but he now wants to run against Keir Starmer. He's slightly from the left of the party, whilst Reform, Nigel Farage's party, and Restore, Rupert Lowe's party, are also vying for that seat. It'll be interesting because this constituency will be a seat where forever and a day Labour, the former working class party, has held the seat somewhere in Yorkshire. Sort of like if you have movies like Billy Elliot and such, they're filmed sort of in Yorkshire, the industrial towns up north, near Middlesbrough and further north, Northumbria, Newcastle. And those were secure places. Like certain places were always securely in Democrat hands, certain steel towns and such. And it might be that the guy who wants to succeed Keir Starmer as Prime Minister might fail because he might not be able to secure that seat. Whereas in the past, it was always, like, both for Democrats and Republicans, if you want a guy get into office and challenge one of the incumbents, so you select a secure seat that he's got no connection to, but he will be elected. But even that is no foregone conclusion right now. So yeah, it's anyone's guess how this is gonna turn out? I mean, my inkling is Northern Ireland is a different beast, and they will not be pacified quite so easily as the rest of the country, as the rest of Europe, for the historical stock of the people that I try to convey.
Well, I think that you're coming to the point in Europe, definitely in France, in the UK, where you're going to descend into civil war, essentially. Either that, or there's going to be a change in the government. I don't think they're going to allow a change in the government. You're German. I don't know what they're going to do with AfD. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, there is an interesting thing between Anglo-Saxon and Germanic countries, or essentially the UK and the rest of Europe. Well, generally, what Anglo-Saxon countries are much better at is co-opting opposition into the ruling elite. Whereas in Germany, they have been, no, you're not part of it. No, you're not part of it. So this whole co-opting thing just didn't work. And I mean, in the UK, we've seen how quickly Nigel Farage's party got co-opted by the elites, by accepting former Labour and former Tories in their ranks. And I mean, I think even Nigel Farage way back had been even offered office within the Tories. That, like, okay, what do you want? But that doesn't happen quite in the same way as Germany. And at this point, I don't see them even being able to ban the AfD, given that it's the strongest party now.
What about Rupert Lowe in the UK? Where is he going?
I would say I've never seen a party going stratospheric in the best possible way as his party has gone. He remains a much more credible candidate as Nigel Farage. I mean, it is interesting, and so far, always look what are the elites saying. And the elites suddenly are talking, oh, good Farage, but much, much worse Rupert Lowe. And they first try to ignore him, then they try to villainize him. But Restore has a fantastic ground game. And they're systematically targeted. They're, rather than growing quickly and accepting plenty of former Tories and former Labour people, they try to grow organically. Unlike Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe is systematically building up very young people, whereas Nigel Farage's one big flaw, not too dissimilar maybe from Donald Trump, is not allowing successors to flourish next to himself, whereas Rupert Lowe is raising people in their mid-20s till their end 20s who will step in his shoes very, very quickly. And the way they're targeting local constituencies is quite fascinating. Rather than doing the same thing as the other parties are doing, like where they parachute a person into a certain constituency and, hey, this is a popular candidate, vote for him, they are saying, no, local issues first. I mean, that's where Restore ran in their constituencies a while ago, the local elections. They ran for 10 seats. They won all 10 seats, 10 out of 10. Yeah. And how they did it is they did local issues first. They're like that constituency, Great Yarmouth first, kind of from America first. They said Great Yarmouth first, and they went hardcore on local issues and said, yes, we also happen to be the party that does that at national level. And they bring in plenty of people that have connections with the local areas, who have street credibility, and they move from there. So it is interesting how quickly can they scale up. I think the next election might be too early for them, but they'll definitely get seats, and they've already fulfilled part of their mission in the sense that they did drag back reform back to the right, whereas a guy like Nigel Farage actually excluded mass deportations and said, this is evil. And
now Farage is a big, huge disappointment.
And he said this is evil and this is disproportionate. And I mean, kind of showing maybe fundamentally he's a boomer in his outlook. And this is not to disparage plenty of your viewers who are very based people and happen to be boomers, but sort of the mindset, the boomer rhino and boomer British conservative
establishment
mindset, that you can't shake that off. And so I do see Restore, if there's any power that can actually hold the other parties to account and move them into a direction, credibly move them into the right direction where they don't want to go, it's Restore. So I'm very optimistic about them. But again, if you build something from the ground up, it's going to take time, especially.
Well, I don't know if the UK has time. I don't know either. I mean, Europe is descending like a dark blanket over the tyranny, the censorship. You know, they're going after crypto. They're going after surveillance of your chats. I mean, it's obvious this is the Fourth Reich and some kind of tyrannical regime.
It is a race. It is a race, like between the populists and the elites. I mean, the elites, as part of their ground game, they seem desperate getting us into war with Russia. I mean, saying we need to be war ready by 2030. And at the same time, absolutely underestimating that. I mean, I hate to say, I'm not a big Putin fan, but people always seem to think that the dictator or strongman of another place, and calling him a strongman is almost a bit of a joke if we compare him with Ursula von der Leyen. At least
I was going to say she's much worse. Yeah,
popular mandate. She doesn't. She's never been elected for anything. But they always seem to think that strongmen of certain countries, and I don't like that term, are the most hardcore extremists. And I'm like, in the greater Russian context, there are other Russian generals who say, look, I mean, the way that the Europeans are prolonging this war and keeping that war alive and Russians dying in the thousands, should we be thinking about tactical nuclear strikes? Should we be thinking about targeting the UK and Germany?
That's the other shoe that's going to drop in Europe is the war with Russia.
Yeah,
Christian, I've got to go, man. I've got another guest to come in, but
yeah. Well,
I want to have you back. Thank you for making time.
I'll see you next week for sure.
Yeah.
Something crazy will have happened. Thank you.
It's going to happen. Ciao. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nuclear wasn't a product that was developed and to sell, really. What it really was a journey to get me well after my experience trying to immigrate and get married to an American citizen in order to get my green card. Towards the end, they send you for a medical, and that's where they sat me down and gave me 16 vaccines in one sitting. At the time, I knew when I was going through it that it's probably not good, but I didn't realize that I'm about to go through the worst health experience of my life. And that's when I went on this journey and understand that nutrition is actually your medicine. I've always heard the old people say your food's in your garden, but we didn't get it. And your body is always trying to heal itself. I mean, you know, when you cut yourself in a couple of days, it heals. And that is the process of homeostasis. Your body is always every cell in your body is always healing itself. And just like anything, if you bake a cake or you build a house, you need the right ingredients to achieve the result. Now, if you don't have the correct nutrition and you're not eating the correct food, it's like trying to build a house without bricks. Now, a lot of people, they say, what does nuclear do? Nuclear itself does nothing. It's not designed to do anything. Your body does the work. It gives your body all the things it needs balanced in, and it works together to deliver the correct nutritional supplement that you need as a human being to function normally.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Okay, welcome back to the SCIF. You're not going to want to miss the second hour. I've got Mr. Gleason and Mr. Blaber. The two together, the dynamic duo. I'm going to put them together on the same show. We'll see what happens. Could be sparks could fly. So stay tuned for the second hour at 11 with those two incredible gentlemen who are saving the republic one election at a time. And until then, we're going to watch Dr. McCullough talk about how to get rid of that inflammation you've got. So here we go.
I'm honored to be back with a friend of the show, Dr. Peter McCullough from the Wellness Company. Doc, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
So I saw something that you put out, and we have some people on our team that were really involved in Lyme disease early on and got it and were persecuted really for saying, I think I have Lyme disease because it has all these other symptoms that docs didn't really want to treat. But you said something recently that almost everyone has markers for this. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we've been shocked to see that, over time, it looks like all of us get a tick bite of some sort. And there are certainly tick-borne diseases, Lyme disease, babesiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and others. But what's unique about Lyme, the organism Borrelia burgdorferi, is that it installs certain antigens in the body. One of them is called opsinin A that cause chronic illness. There's no doubt about it. People develop chronic Lyme. And, the key is to treat it very early. In fact, in the Wellness Company, we have emergency medical kits that have doxycycline. There's a protocol. If you get a tick bite, within a very brief period of time, if you take doxycycline, you're fine. But once the Lyme organism is installed and we start to get Lyme disease, it causes a skin rash, Todd. It looks like a target, like the red target shopping store. Yeah. So my wife had it. She actually developed the target. And where the tick usually bites, believe it or not, is the back of the arm. It's a place you can't see. And that's exactly where my wife got it. And so it forms a target. And if you treat it right away, in that case, we used 2 antibiotics for my wife. Again, problem solved. But if it's not detected, weeks to months later, there's joint inflammation. It gets into the brain, causing all kinds of neurologic problems. It gets into the heart and actually causes heart block, which requires a pacemaker. That happened in my wife's cousin. People live in the Northeast originally, is where it was originally described, but Michigan, loaded, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and even down through the central Midwest, including Oklahoma and Texas. My wife got it in Texas, actually. So the key thing about Lyme is to make sure you have an emergency medical kit from the Wellness Company, recognize a tick bite early, follow the protocol, take doxycycline to knock it out. If one develops clinical Lyme disease, oftentimes 2 antibiotics are needed. Again, that's covered in the Wellness Company kits. Chronic Lyme disease is a problem, and that's the reason why there's been attempts on vaccination. So there was a vaccine several years ago. It was partially effective to prevent the first case of Lyme, but in fact, it caused post-Lyme syndrome, including joint symptoms, and now a new one recently on focal points. And again, it was partially effective, about 70%, but seemed to cause joint aches. And so, we don't want to give a vaccine to a well person and end up with a post-Lyme-like syndrome. So that's where we are right now. I still think it's about prompt detection, early treatment.
Interesting, because my son had it, and we didn't realize he had it because he didn't get the target. One of my other children had the target, but he came in one night in the middle of the night. He was like, 6 years old, walked into the bedroom, and my wife and I, he's like, do you see that bed? It's coming after me. And he was hallucinating.
Yes.
So it was in the brain, right?
Yes.
It's really, really
brain.
scary.
It's scary. Gets in the heart. An example, my wife's cousin needed a pacemaker. I mean, it really is a real syndrome. And, medical professionals for the longest time denied it. There was a great controversy of whether or not there was a post-Lyme syndrome. Linked to this can be chronic fatigue syndrome, neuropathies, and finally, all the medical societies agree there is a post-Lyme syndrome. It's a legitimate diagnosis. And once we're past the phase where antibiotics can be used, most of this is dealing with the body's reaction to the Lyme antigen and forms of detoxification.
So let's talk about that. Inflammation is a big deal. A lot of, especially older people, have it. A lot of the stuff there, the treatments that come out today are just to mask the underlying problem. Talk to me about inflammation, please.
So true. Inflammation is what makes our joints sore and stiff. And as we get older, sometimes it's frankly painful, but a lot of times what I think, Todd, is that I just feel old, like my knees feel old. And the big innovation from the wellness company are forms of peptides. Now, peptides are less than 50 amino acids in length. We have a topical product that's wonderful, particularly for the knees and the hands, elbows, and that's called TheraBlue. TheraBlue features several peptides as well as botanicals, menthol, and actually methylene blue. That's the reason why it's called TheraBlue. It actually looks like a blue cream. You rub it into your knees and elbows, hands, and boy, does it work. I mean, it's miraculous how much better you feel when you use TheraBlue. It comes in a pretty big pump canister. So I think twice a day on TheraBlue for people with chronic joint ailments is wonderful. And now we have a systemic approach called Regenerate. Regenerate is leveraging topical drops, and we can use up to about 30 drops in a cup of coffee or just a small shot glass or two of water. And Regenerate contains 3 peptides, one commonly used, BP157, that's 15 amino acids inside, KPV, 3 amino acids, and TB500, 7 amino acids. And there's a special aquasome technology that allows these to get into the system. This is wonderful because it's not a drug to cover up pain. It's not a genetic treatment. These are peptides that have a very positive function in the body, and then they're disposed of through our typical reticuloendothelial system clearance. So these are a breakthrough. People who want to fundamentally improve their musculoskeletal health. It's also very good for the GI microbiome.
So if I'm correct, I'm not a doctor, but these are like building blocks that your body can use to repair itself. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. So the body, it stimulates repair. That's exactly what they do. They stimulate repair. They do tend to block various inflammatory programs. There is a whole process called epigenetics where certain factors turn on genes, and those genes produce inflammatory factors. So you have to have inhibitors, and a lot of times that's what these peptides do. There's more and more research suggesting they're very beneficial. The best thing about them is safe. They are very safe. I worry about my patients taking the heavy-duty anti-inflammatories. For instance, my mom has arthritis, and she takes meloxicam, which is a prescription non-steroidal. It's in the family with Motrin and Aleve. And boy, I tell you, it causes stomach ulcers and kidney problems like there's no tomorrow. And I'm greatly worried about meloxicam, Bextra, these types of drugs. I think the safest over-the-counter anti-inflammatory is actually naproxen sodium, the blue gel caps. Well, that would be Aleve or the generic form, which is the same. But it's in a gel cap. This is very important because you want the pain relief quickly, but you don't want the tablet to lay against the stomach and burn a hole in the stomach and cause an ulcer. So I never take Motrin tablets or Aleve tablet. If I have a bad headache, I'll take 2 of the blue gel caps. Naproxen sodium blue gel caps. You can get them anywhere.
Interesting. So there's no really, side effects of some of these peptides you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
No, they are free of anything concerning whatsoever. And, they take time. I tell everybody, listen, these are, products that are natural to the body. Give it a good 6 to 12 months and see if that back stiffness and hips and knees, especially the deeper joints, that's hard to get to with various forms of rubs. And I'm thinking about the lumbosacral spine, the hips, deep into the shoulders. People should consider Regenerate. You can only do so much with physical therapy and then the over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. They have their role, and certainly if there's terrible pain, you can't sleep, you can take 2 of them. But you want to fundamentally improve the problems, fundamentally make the joints better. The 2 products are TheraBlue topically and Regenerate by taking oral drops.
Well, thank you.
Excited to announce that we're having our biggest Made in America sale ever. We just put huge discounts on products made right here in the USA. My Pillow bed pillows, body pillows, go anywhere pillows, bolster pillows, all made with my patented adjustable fill. Mattresses, mattress toppers, mattress pads, adjustable bed frames, mattress foundations, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. And now we're expanding our USA products beyond just quality sleep. Like the cross I wear every day, now available in both men's and women's. We even have USA-made socks. And are you tired of being tired? Try our new health beverage, Rev 7. Or how about my coffee, the greatest coffee ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get deep discounts on all these products. Plus, for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Divorce is tough, but your finances don't have to be. I'm David Cross, and I'm a certified divorce financial analyst practitioner. My job is to help you get a fair financial settlement in your divorce and to guide you to smarter money decisions. Find out how we can help you. U.S. Asset Management. It's your money.
A warm welcome here at the National Press Club. Welcome to the journalists, welcome to the Embraer team, and welcome to the other guests that we have here. We're going to announce, and as some of you guessed it right when they came in, the first E2 order by an American operator. And that operator is Avello. We believe this is really a strategic shift to unlock profitability for the customer. I'm very pleased that we have Andrew Levy here as the CEO of Avello, and I'm very pleased to give the stage to share a little bit more about what Avello is going to do with the E2 195. Thank you very much.
Couldn't be more excited to be here as part of this historic announcement. We have such a great cultural fit as companies, so we're very, very excited to be Embraer's newest customer. We launched our airline in April of 21, and our target is focusing on small secondary airports of large metro areas. We've carried over 8 million customers since we started on 63,000 flights. And we've done all these things with 1,200 of the greatest crew members I could ever imagine having, and many of them are here with me today. This is the right airplane for us. It's going to open up opportunities for us that no other aircraft can serve. The best thing about the airplane, of course, is you will not find a middle seat on this airplane. It doesn't exist. We won't have any to offer. It's going to be the best cabin in the United States, and we're so excited about that. This is going to elevate our experience to the highest level, and we think our customers are absolutely going to love the airplane.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret, silver wings.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I am on the road, obviously not in the studio, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Avello Airlines. We just signed another long-term contract with them, and we're very, very proud of that relationship. They came to us and said, "You're doing such a great job in the Northeast. We want to advertise with you." So that just signed another one. So fantastic news for CDM. All right, it's time. I told you the second hour was going to be powerful, and I've got two guys I've never had on the same show. I'm a little scared to put them in the same frame here because I got Chris Gleason, who's single-handedly saving the elections in the country, and Special Unit Commander Pete Blaber, who you all know very well. So I'm going to bring them in now. We're going to talk about what's going on in California, Californication of the elections. Here we go. How you doing, gentlemen? Thanks for coming on.
Good. We're doing good. Great, Todd. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for both of you coming on. I appreciate it. So I got a lot to talk about, but Chris, I want to start with you. And I think there's going to be a lot of people seeing this video around the world who may not have heard of your background, what you've been doing. Can you give us the elevator pitch of the blank ballots, the voting fraud that you found in Pinellas and everything, and then we'll go from there, please.
Okay. So I'm a tech guy. I'm a finance guy. And I got involved with elections via big tech censorship, and I ended up digging into the election stuff, in particular with identity verification, voter ID, undeliverable as addressed vote by mail ballots, and it's kind of expanded and grown over the years. One of the big things that we see in Florida, we saw in Florida, were that the voter rolls were really dirty, and that massive numbers of vote by mail ballots were being sent out to addresses that the voters that they were intended to get to never got to them, and because they had moved and they lived someplace else. And we started exposing that in Florida, and we moved into other states. We have we then expanded into the machine fraud. We discovered in Florida that the voting machines were illegally adjudicating ballots as being 100% blank when they were in fact not. And we expanded from Florida into Maryland, into all of the other states, into Georgia, Arizona, Texas, Illinois, Wisconsin. And the more we look, the more we see certain patterns.
Well, let me just jump in there, because what happened, just so our audience understands, because they haven't heard this, you have, like in Miami, in certain precincts in 2020, you had 20% of those votes cast or more being seen as blank by the machines, meaning 20% of the population. Miami has 5 million people. Do the math. Came in and voted and didn't vote in and didn't fill in anything and cast a blank ballot. That's what the machines were telling you, right?
That is correct. And then
when you brought this to the attention of the Florida government, they passed an act called the Election Integrity Act, which said Chris Gleason can no longer see this data.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. It was the Election Fraud Legalization Act, SB 7050.
Yeah.
And
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is we were seeing all of these election cases getting thrown out all over the country, ostensibly with real evidence of fraud. In Maryland, in particular, there were 2 federal cases that I was involved with. And what we saw was the judge said, oh, well, the plaintiffs don't have standing to sue. So I decided to run after being browbeaten by some folks locally. They drafted me, and I obliged, and I ran for standing. And we uncovered all of the vectors of fraud that they were going to deploy, because they did not want me or 12 of my other friends getting into election administration positions in Florida. Because if we had been elected, and all of us were election integrity people, and had that been uncovered, the whole rotten scheme would be shown to the world. And so they deployed all the fraud against us. I mean, they crashed the election systems on election night. In my case, we had 219,675 vote by mail ballots requested by voters 2 or 3 days after I qualified and got on the ballot.
And that was done on a Sunday when the office was closed, right?
Yeah. And so then, and that's where, everybody's reaching out to us. They're saying, hey, I never requested a vote by mail ballot. And we saw the shenanigans. I mean, it was what is going on here in LA, but an additional 13 or 14% more of the vote by mail ballots. And so we contested the election. We filed an emergency motion to stop the election fraud. We filed requests for grand jury investigations. We did a lot of stuff. We did everything that concerned and well-informed candidates and voters and citizens would do. And so what did they do? They took a panel of judges. They took every judge that touched my case was part of a group of protected voters. Those would be public officials, government agents, judges, law enforcement, whose personally identifiable information is either a matter of national security or serious security for their own well-being because they're protected, right? So there was 1,500 of these people included in the 219,675. And every single one of these judges mysteriously, and their first relations, their wives, kids, you know, they all also requested their vote by mail ballots online on Sunday, June 23rd. But there was a block. The security, all the security mechanisms to prevent that from happening were overridden. And so either what that means is you had a internal breach of security, or you had bad actors accessing the stuff remotely. Now, when I asked for the IP logs, because there would have been a log of all the people who requested their vote by mail ballots, they told me it was going to take 18,000 hours or 19,000 hours to generate a report that would take 4 mouse clicks. So what we're seeing,
and you had to pay for that, right?
And they want, at $150, $200 an hour. And so, I mean, I could code an entire election system, you know, in that amount of time. They just didn't want anybody to see what's going on. And in fact, we brought so much evidence of fraud that the judge, to conceal the fraud, sealed every single exhibit in the case and said, "Oh, there's nothing to see here,"
and dismissed the case. Yeah,
and dismissed the case.
Yeah,
and then I appealed. So then I appealed it, and every single judge on the panel was either up for election, tied to an election that this scheme went on, or they themselves were again on that list. And so, you know, it's sheer comedy, but it's not comedy.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing in LA, you know, we know that there's something afoot here, and because everybody, at least the people that I've been talking to since I arrived here yesterday, the word on the street is people aren't happy about the outcome currently. And so we started some groundwork prior to me arriving here in LA, and we're going to see the data. I'm not going to rush, you know, and I never really rush to make a determination. I want to, because at the end of the day, right, politicians lie, lawyers lie, both of them are paid to lie for the most part. You know, their jobs require them to lie in order to stay gainfully employed. I'm a data guy, and I like to see what the data is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data. We're going to see what is the story with the vote by mail ballots? What is the story with the machines? I mean, I've looked at audit logs and like for Riverside, and in Riverside, I saw massive numbers of blank ballots.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
Surprise. Now, vote by mail, there are a lot of government data points that we can look at and evaluate what's going on. And, you know, it's the government's own data. So you're supposed to be able to.
Let me break in right there and ask Pete. Pete, you've been really, a point you've been driving home is that Ukraine is where they practiced a lot of this stuff, the censorship industrial complex. I think they may have tested a lot of this election fraud over there too. Do you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And the parallels are incredible. We've said on many episodes, we try to speak for the people of Ukraine because they have no voice. And it's somewhat ironic that I'm saying that on our podcast when, you know, the area I live in, we're living under the same conditions. We have no voice in California. And every time I see a newscast or a social media comment on, you know, well, Californians, this is what they want, this is what they get. Well, folks, I'm just telling you that is not accurate. If there was a fair election in California, you would see the same reason Ronald Reagan was elected. People want a governor who will take care of them, during a crisis, a governor who makes decisions based on the greater good of the people. And of course, the same thing for mayor. You know, as we see all our great big cities, you know, being destroyed in front of our eyes in slow motion. And of course, everyone is familiar with what's happened to LA, the takeover by the homeless, and of course, the Palisades fire, you know, 2 years ago, which, you know, are not anything except pure, unadulterated incompetence. And that's what you get when someone is allowed to go into those jobs who doesn't care about the people. And so my thought, and, you know, I've researched this, certainly not to the level Chris has, but this has been going on in California for some time. We know Kamala Harris won the Attorney General election in 2010. A month after the election, she lost the election and then won, you know, a month later by less than 1%. So that was 2010. Gavin Newsom's recall election, all kinds of shady things with that. Votes weren't counted. In fact, he won by the exact same percent that he won the election, I believe, in 2018. So they just used the same algorithm to get the same result for the recall election. And, you know, there's that famous line, you know, someone made when Nixon won, you know, some Democrats said, everyone I know was against Nixon. And it's kind of ironic because, of course, you hang out with people who, you know, think like you, vote like you. And I would venture to say that's not the case in California. Anywhere you go, and it was especially prominent during that recall election, Gavin Newsom is despised by the vast majority of people of California. His fatal move was when he basically outlawed LLCs, independent contractors, truck drivers, people who, you know, work in nail salons, hair salons, all the kind of blue collar jobs, but basically made it, you know, extremely difficult or impossible for them to maintain their status as LLCs. And people were salivatingly mad about that. And you would hear it everywhere you went. And so, you know, they're stealing these elections in slow motion. They've been doing it incrementally. I think they've learned as they've gone along. Chris, you can chime in. I think 2018 was their big coming out party where the full suite was used and, you know, implemented and successfully. If you remember 18, I think there were 7 elections that were turned up to a month after the election results were done. 7 Republicans won, and then 7 Republicans lost within the next month. So they've been perfecting this all along. And because they control the legislature, the judiciary, and the you know, the government, the political side of the government, they basically have got to the point where they can do whatever they want. And, you know, as this election has showed, they do it brazenly and without any compunction.
You know,
Chris, can you go ahead?
So there's it's interesting, right? Because we all grew up knowing that, or told, we all grew up told that, you know, hold your elected officials accountable, right? And especially during an election year. And what I've seen over the years is that accountability drop less and less. And I'll tell you, since about 2008-ish, that was where we saw the new style of machines by ES&S and Dominion and all of them be deployed throughout the United States. And they started out slow with the adjudication of the ballots as being blank. It was a very small incremental number. And, you know, it literally is grown and exploded, kind of like what you were saying. In 18, we know that after the 16 election, that the Soros org they had a post-election after action review at the Mandarin Hotel in Washington, D.C. And they said, hey, this is never going to happen again. And we have to stop this. And as a result of that, they targeted social media. That was part of their plan. And, you know, I at the time, me and about 400 of my friends, we had massive sway on the undecided voter in 2018, leading up to the election in 2018. And they, 3 weeks before, or 2 or 3 weeks before the midterms, they digitally assassinated all of us. And George Soros and Move On, they were, tickled pink about it. They called us election interference, Russian bots, and all this. It was really ridiculous stuff. And they have captured. We have a captured system right now. But the only way that we can take back that captured system is by having an informed and active populace. And that's what we're seeing here now in LA. I mean, the people who asked me to come, they said, hey, Chris, we really need you to come here and get to the bottom of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, I'm not going to draw any premature conclusions, because that's just not what I do. But what I'm going to tell you is based on the vibe that I got from talking to people here. People of California really don't want this. And I'm thinking that what I'm going to see in the data is what I've noticed nationwide in the audit logs that I see where the elections don't have massive vote by mail fraud. And we're gonna get to the bottom of it, and we're gonna flush this out because it's the government's own data, right? And they weren't expecting Chris Gleason to come to California.
Well, Chris, I'll tell the audience that ES&S, after your work over the last year, sent out a warning to all the election administrators across the country: do not talk to Chris Gleason. So, I mean, so there you go. I mean, I just want to highlight, you're talking about shutting down and wiping out data. We got this morning from TikTok. So they don't want anything. I mean, it's amazing the level of censorship still going on. I'd like you to, again, this is a new audience, and CDM audience has heard all this, but maybe some of Pete's audience hasn't. Talk about the smurfing just quickly. Give us the overview of what's happening with that.
Okay. So I was working on a project for a tech guy. Scott Stevenson, he was the co-founder of WebCrawler. So for the older folks in the audience, they'll probably remember that they were kind of like one of the first search engines. Mm-hmm. And we had a data problem that we were trying to solve. In Washington State, they don't delineate across party lines within the voter roll. So, and they have what's called a jungle primary, where anybody can vote in the primary. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to determine who was most likely to vote in the primary, and their propensity to donate, and who they were going to donate for. And so as we started the analysis there, we figured out that there were these elderly people who were donating thousands and thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes in some cases, a third of the value of their home, and they had a mortgage. So it was kind of odd. And then I looked in Oklahoma because I had been helping a Senate race there with some data. And then we went into Florida. And in Florida, we found it not only at the federal level, but at the state level, and then at the local level. And so essentially what we found is that that Act Blue was using the identities of senior citizens to inject capital into these races. And when we started asking these people if they had in fact made the contributions, they were like, no, I never did that many. And so over time, we've figured out that when Red is now doing it, and there's an alternate platform that they've stood up where the Purple Party is doing it. And as we've been kind of peeling the onion on this, we're seeing Chinese money, we're seeing foreign money, we're seeing billionaire money. What we're seeing is the manufacturing of consent to make candidates appear more popular than they actually. And so we know that, we've always been told, right? The political analysts always say, well, the way that you can tell if a candidate is popular is if people are giving them money. And, at $5, $6 gas, people are not happy. People are not happy with the State of the Union today. And we know for a fact, because we've been talking to these people, that they're not donating. They're not donating this money. I mean, we've got now the top Smurf in the country, a guy by the name of Bruce Makowski out of Michigan. I think he's up to about 220,000 times that he's donated in the past couple of years. And so we see smurfing. I started looking into the smurfing here in LA, and both Karen Bass and Ramen, they both have some of our ranked nationwide smurfs. About 10%, I believe, of Bass's donations come from the Smurf Network. And Ramen,
just so to be clear, this is likely CCP money being injected into these campaigns.
This is a natural extension. So we saw in 1996 the CCP paying for Bill Clinton and Al Gore's reelection campaign. That was called Chinagate. And in exchange for these campaign contributions, Walmart got access to China. Businesses got access to China, but China didn't want just Walmarts and our businesses. They wanted partnerships. They wanted missile technology. They wanted supercomputing technology. And over the years, as China has done this, they have declared their unrestricted warfare against America. And they have been waging unrestricted warfare by subverting our elections, by controlling supply chains like chips that go into the voting machines. I mean, Foxconn makes Apple phones, and Foxconn also makes Dell computers, and Dell computers are used as the basis for the election administration stuff here in the United States.
Give us an idea of the scale. Like, who's your biggest recipient of this money? Is it John Ossoff? I mean, who is?
Well,
give us the scale of who the top three
the Democrat Party. So ACT Blue by far, they're about 75% of this money. We've broken it down. After 96, they in that election, there was an organization called MoveOn.org that was started. And MoveOn.org is very central to all of this, okay? MoveOn.org, the labor unions are also central to this, and ACT Blue. And so ACT Blue served as a mechanism to inject the Chinese money easily, much more easily, into the political campaigns. And this is done in conjunction, like I said, with the labor union. So you have your AFL-CIO. They were the ones that pioneered the micro contributions. And so this operation is scaled over time. The once CEO of ACT Blue went off, and he started a new one called Democracy Engine. And that one serves the Purple Party. That one serves the establishment Republicans, the establishment Democrats. So me, as a United States Senate candidate, I wanted to use all the fundraising platforms, one, to see how they all handled certain things. And I had applied to Democracy Engine, and they would not let me onto their platform. Funny how that works. We also reached out to Chainbridge Bank, which facilitates a lot of the banking for these same Republican committees. Now, on the Democrat side, you have the Labor Union Bank, Amalgamated Bank. So there's no way that this system isn't captured, because you would have things like fraud alerts. you would have all of these things happening that we would see. So when Bruce Makowski or Sonia Imamache or any of these elderly Smurfs, okay, were making 1,800 transactions in a single day, okay, every fraud mechanism should have been triggered, but it wasn't, or they were simply disabled. And so
what are the totals though? What like Ossoff? How much has he brought in approximately?
hundreds of millions of dollars. Ossoff, I mean, I filed a complaint against Ossoff. I mean, it was about $150-200 million against him. Same thing with ActBlue. I mean, I have active FEC cases going against ActBlue, against Ossoff, against one of the vectors that the CCP has been using to capture the Florida elections. It's a company called iGas. They are under de facto CCP control. And this was determined in like 12 or 16 different cases, administrative and legal, 4 different administrations, commerce departments. I mean, CCP owns and controls these companies, and they are buying our politicians. They bought Florida. They bought Ron DeSantis. They bought Byron Donalds. They bought Ashley Moody, who I'm running against. She was the attorney general when this started. And rather than investigate it and stop it, as she should have, she became one of their best customers. And we saw this money, being plowed into the anti-Massey campaign in Kentucky. And, so we have to stop this. I mean, we've got massive amounts of foreign money pouring in, both through CCP and AIPAC. I've also filed an massive FEC complaint against AIPAC, and they're using the Smurf networks, same consultants. And so what we have to do is petition the Treasury to seize the money, which I have done. And, we need to keep the pressure on this, because once a campaign is notified about the illicit money, then they're supposed to segregate and disgorge the funds. So overall, we're probably, for a total dollar amount during the entire RICO scheme, probably looking somewhere in the magnitude of $600 billion. Now, what's really shocking about the $600 billion is that, think of it as an investment, okay, by the bad guys. And for their $600 billion investment, they get control of a multi-trillion-dollar economy year in, year out. So
let me ask Pete. Let me jump in there with Pete. Pete, what are people? Do you think California is at a point where it may wake people up because of this, or cause them to react?
Yeah, I do. It's difficult, like I said, because the Democrats have a lock on the judiciary, as well as the legislature, and of course the top political offices in the state. So it's difficult to see, what's going to happen, or what solutions there are. I don't see any other except, from the federal level, to somehow thwart what's happening, to stop it in its tracks. But it's going to be difficult, unless something changes in one of those 3 branches of the government. And, I'll say this, Todd, on specific to the 2 California elections everyone's watching right now, the governor and the mayoral race. American self-governance rests on an indispensable foundation, and that's that elections will reflect the will of eligible citizens, that votes are counted accurately, and that voting is administered transparently. Election integrity advocates like Chris argue that this foundation in California especially has been progressively undermined, and not necessarily by a single grand conspiracy, by a systemic pattern of loosened safeguards, dirty voter rolls, exploitable mail-in ballots, and the aggressive Democratic opposition to audits and reforms that would solve and resolve these problems and the public doubt once and for all. Again, to talk specifically about California, let me just briefly describe our election system that's occurring right now. First off, anyone who's registered to vote gets a ballot mailed to them, and everyone who can drive is registered to vote, because when you walk into DMV, you automatically get registered no matter what. There's no check for citizenship. There's no check for ID. There's no check for anything. You're just automatically on the voter rolls. People outside California probably suspect this, but haven't heard it as factual. California leads the nation in giving driver's licenses and registrations to illegal immigrants and people who are in the country illegally. And it's not just driver's licenses. They get free driver's ed too. So you can see they're trying to churn these people through to get them registered. And then, so that's the first part of it. The second part is the ballot harvesting. In California, any individual can go and collect ballots from anyone. They can go knock on doors. This is the way they described it when they passed it, that these people can go knock on doors as kind of good Samaritans and say, hey, you can give me your ballot and I'll take it. I'll take care of it for you. And those people who knock on your door to collect your ballots, there's no oversight of them. They can work for any political entity they want, to include political action committees. You can't make this up. Paid political action committees for one party. And again, back to those people, they can pick and choose what ballots they want to go supposedly collect. And once they collect them, they either bring them into a voting station, or more regularly and more commonly, they put them in a drop box. And their third option is they can throw them in the garbage can, because remember, there's no oversight, there's no transparency. They can do whatever they want. And once again, there's no ID required for either a mail-in or a drop box ballot. So all you have to do is sign the ballot. But of course, California steps in again. It would be discriminatory to allow someone who is illiterate and can't write their name to vote. So when you sign your ballot, all you have to do is make a mark. And you can make literally a smiley face if you want, which there's already been recorded instances of ballots with smiley faces on them. So what does California say to that? They say, well, the smiley face, someone has to witness you putting that smiley face on there. So, once again, there's an out that they've created. There's a little box for the witness to sign in. But of course, most signature blocks, you have printed name and signature. There's no printed name in California. There's just a signature. So any messy signature will do. It's just a signature. And oh, by the way, when those ballots are collected, the witness signature isn't checked. So there's no one in the counting facility going, who is this witness? They just check that there's a signature for the witness. And let's talk the final thing they do, which is late ballots. In California, a ballot can come in as late as a week after Election Day. And of course, same thing. Whenever these laws were, up for discussion, everyone was saying, why do we need that? What would that help? We've been doing this for decades and never had any problem. There's a day you have to get your vote in, and that's it. But the ballot had to be mailed or put into a drop box by Election Day. That's the law. So how does that work? There's no postmark in either of those. There's no postmark in a ballot box. It's just a box. You put it in there. So what does California depend on? The date you write on that ballot. So all you have to do is write the day of the day of the vote on your ballot, and you can put it into a box up to a week later. So as I'm describing this, you can kind of see how they operate. They get the initial results, then they see we're behind by 20,000, 100,000 votes. Here's what we need. And the Army goes out, and I'll step back and go back to the ballot harvesting. When ballot harvesting was passed in California, the way I described it is the way they described it. Anyone who lives in any neighborhood today knows that's almost impossible to do. You can't, to go around and knock on doors and go, hey, do you have a ballot that you want me to take in? That would take you, months, if not years, to find 100 ballots. So they don't go around knocking on doors. No one would answer their door to some random individual. They just go and get their pile of ballots and bring them to the drop box, all dated on the date of the election, and they go right into the system, fast track, without all those checks and balances we've already talked about. And so, everything I described to you has taken place over the last few days, and now you can see empirical examples. We know the mayoral race, Spencer Pratt is now out. He's out of the runoff. Nitha Raman, who we all know had already conceded and who lost her own district, CD4, to both Spencer Pratt and Karen Bass. So think about that. In her district, she came in third. But the people running this vote expect us to believe, and not just believe, but expect us to not say anything when they tell us that in the end, she ended up beating both of them by almost 50% of the remaining mail-in ballots that were counted. So she can't beat either of her competitors in her own district, but somehow she landslide beats them in all other districts in LA, but only in this time period after she had conceded, after Spencer Pratt was in this, almost impossible to overtake second place. And as I mentioned, California's been running this scam for a long time. In 2010, Kamala Harris lost her bid to be California's AG, but miraculously 1 month later, she was declared the winner thanks to this remarkable surge in mail-in ballots. She won by less than 1%. So just take that and think of the historical implication and what it says about a party that would put someone like her in just to cheat to get her in. And she could have won the 24 easily if not for people like Chris and the election integrity advocates that they had brought together to safeguard the national election in 2024. That was the only thing that stemmed the tide of cheating. But, if they hadn't, Kamala Harris would have been president, and no one could even imagine the dire straits we'd be in today if she had been elected president. Saying World War III could have started by now is not a stretch, because she had an insane position on Russia and Ukraine, just to give one example. And that's where we get into what Chris mentioned earlier. One of the reasons this election fraud is so detrimental is because it's violating the laws of nature. There's no learning feedback loop here. There's nothing to make these politicians perform or to raise their level of competency. When they make a mistake, they don't have to come back and try to do something good for the people. They don't have to try to curry favor of the people who are their bosses, because they know I got here by cheating. I'm going to win my next election by cheating. So I can go travel to Africa anytime I want, even when my fire department tells me we're in a code 4 fire danger period. And I'll just end by saying the directional pattern is what, is probably most overwhelming here. All fraud across the nation benefits only one party, the Democratic Party. And it's the most rhetorically powerful argument to be made, because it just tells you if this was random, there would be Republican cheating, there'd be Democratic cheating, but there is none. It's all on one side, and it's all this machine. And in California, the way I just described it is how it operates. And it's It's not this massive violation of law. It's the result of laws that have been gerrymandered and manipulated to allow this type of fraud and this type of cheating to go on.
Thank you, Pete. Chris, I'll give you the last word. We're out of time, but finish up.
So one of the good things about, there's couple of good things about California, right? One is the public records laws. And so if you know what to ask for, you can pretty much get it. Because there's stuff that I got here in California that I couldn't get in Florida. Crazy. The other thing is that in California, you guys have got a fantastic civil grand jury process where citizens can petition a civil grand jury to investigate government corruption. And so I'm here. We're looking at the VBMs and the machine stuff, but I'm here to also talk to the very, very concerned citizens of Los Angeles to invoke their rights to request that grand jury, civil grand jury investigation. And I think that may be something that could save LA or California if an informed voter base gets active and starts to request, well, hey, what about this? Is this government corruption? What is this? And we're going to equip the people of LA who are very concerned with the tools that they need to keep tabs on this and raise issues. So God is great. And what greater thing would be for God to save America through the city of angels, right?
Fantastic. Well, we may have to start a new podcast on the California elections. I don't know. Thank you both. We're out of time for the audience. We'll be back on the SCIF tomorrow at 10 to noon. Thank you for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed it. So take care.